Malik Carter's phone alarm buzzed at 5:10 a.m. That quiet, ugly sound that meant another long day was starting before the sun even showed its face. He sat up slowly, not because he was lazy, but because he'd learned to move with control. His room was small and cold, with a thin line of streetlight cutting through the blinds. He rubbed his eyes, then looked at his hands. His knuckles weren't torn up, but they were rough in a way most people his age didn't understand. The kind of rough that came from showing up, day after day, even when nobody clapped for you. He dressed fast in an old hoodie and sweatpants, and moved through the apartment like a shadow. In the kitchen, his mom was already awake, standing at the counter with a mug of coffee like she needed it just to stay standing. She didn't ask why he was up so early. She already knew. She looked at him the way mothers do when they're proud, but scared at the same time. Like the world was always reaching for their child. "You eat before you go," she said, sliding a banana across the counter like it was a rule, not a suggestion. "I will," Malik answered. Quiet. She studied his face for a second, like she could tell there was something heavy in him, even when he didn't say it out loud. Then she stepped closer and adjusted his hood near his neck, smoothing the fabric down with careful hands. "Keep your head up today," she told him. Her voice low but firm. Malik nodded, but his throat felt tight. Those words always hit different, because he knew she wasn't just talking about walking straight. She was talking about life, about people, about the way the world could look at him and decide what he was before he ever opened his mouth. Outside, the neighborhood was still half asleep. The streets were cracked, and the houses looked tired, like they had been carrying bills and stress for too long. Malik walked fast with his hands in his pockets. The air stung his cheeks, and his breath came out in soft clouds. When he reached the boxing gym, the sign above the door flickered like it might quit any day. But inside, the place felt alive. The smell of sweat and old leather filled the air. A jump rope slapped the floor somewhere in the back. The sound wasn't annoying. It was steady. It was honest. Coach Darnell was already there, watching a kid work the bag. He didn't greet Malik with a smile or a hug. Coach didn't do soft. But he wasn't cruel either. He was the type of man who believed respect was built, not given. "You late," Coach called out. Malik checked his phone. "It's 5:28. Coach shook his head with a small grin. "That means you late." Malik didn't argue. He dropped his bag and started warming up. Jump rope, push-ups, shadowboxing. His movements were smooth and controlled. Like his body was speaking a language his mouth didn't always know how to speak at school. In the mirror, he looked different. Not louder, not bigger, just sure. Like he belonged somewhere. When Malik started hitting the heavy bag, the gym noise faded into the background. His fists landed clean. The bag swung hard, and he followed it with quick footwork, breathing steady the way Coach had drilled into him. Sweat ran down his temple. He didn't wipe it right away. He kept going, because in the ring, stopping meant giving up control. "Control," Coach called. "Don't chase. You lead." Malik adjusted, stepping with the bag instead of after it. Coach nodded once, satisfied. Malik didn't smile. He didn't need to. Respect in that place came from effort, not performance. After training, Malik washed his face in the bathroom sink and stared at his reflection for a moment. In the gym, people saw his discipline. They saw the work. They didn't call him weak. They didn't look at his skin and decide his limits. But school was different. School was a place where loud kids took up space, or toughness meant talking the most and pushing the hardest. A place where somebody like Malik, quiet, focused, not interested in showing off, was seen as an easy target. When Malik walked into school later, the hallway swallowed him up like it always did. Kids shouted, laughed, shoved past each other. Someone bumped his shoulder hard enough to make him stumble a little. Nobody said sorry. Malik kept moving, eyes forward, like the floor was the only safe place to look. "Yo, Malik," a voice called out with that familiar edge. He already knew who it was before he turned. Tanner Briggs was leaning near the lockers with his crew, tall and wide, wearing confidence like it was a jacket that never came off. Tanner's eyes scanned Malik from head to toe, like Malik was something small and strange. "You always walking like you scared," Tanner said loudly, making sure other people heard. "Like you gonna break if somebody breathes too hard." His friends laughed. A couple kids nearby glanced over, then looked away like it wasn't their problem. Malik's fingers tightened around the strap of his backpack. He didn't say anything. He'd learned that answering people like Tanner was like throwing fuel on a fire. But silence didn't feel peaceful. Silence felt like letting somebody write your story for you. Tanner stepped closer, grinning. "See? Nothing to say. That's why everybody know what you are." One of Tanner's boys muttered, "Weak?" The word hit Malik harder than it should have. Not because Malik believed it, but because it was the way they said it, like it was facts, like it was law, like the world had already agreed. Malik swallowed the heat in his chest and turned away. He walked to class with the sound of their laughter chasing him like a shadow dot. By the end of the day, Malik felt drained, not from homework, but from holding himself back, from acting like the little cuts didn't add up, from pretending the stairs didn't mean anything. He sat on the front steps of his building when he got home, staring at the street while the evening light faded. His phone buzzed. A message from Coach Darnell. "You training today, or you quitting?" Malik stared at that text like it was a challenge and a reminder at the same time. He typed back, "Training." Then he stood up and went inside. Because no matter what they called him at school, he knew there was one place where the truth could not be erased. He just didn't know how long he could keep living two different lives, one where he was respected, and one where he was treated like he didn't matter, before those worlds finally crashed into each other. The next morning, Malik walked into school, already feeling tight in his chest. The words from yesterday still echoed in his head, bouncing around like they were looking for somewhere to land. Weak. He told himself not to care. He told himself he'd heard worse. But knowing something and feeling it were two different fights. In first period, Malik kept his head down, copying notes he already understood. The teacher talked about responsibility and respect, words that sounded clean and fair, but didn't always live that way in the hallways. Malik wondered if adults ever noticed how quiet some kids got over time, how silence wasn't always calm, but sometimes learned. When the bell rang, he moved with the crowd again. That was when it happened. It wasn't planned, not officially. It never was. Tanner and his friends were standing near the water fountain, blocking half the hallway like they owned it. Malik tried to slip past, eyes forward, shoulders tight. "Hold up," Tanner said, stepping sideways and stopping him. Malik stopped. He didn't look scared. He didn't look brave either. He just looked tired. "I gotta get to class," Malik said. Tanner laughed. "You always gotta go somewhere, don't you?" A few kids slowed down. Some pretended to tie their shoes. Some leaned against lockers, like they were just watching a show. Tanner leaned closer. "You know what people say about you, right?" Malik said nothing. "They say you soft," Tanner continued. "Quiet, easy." One of Tanner's friends chimed in. "Probably scared to fight." Another added, "Figures." The words stacked on top of each other, heavier with every laugh. Malik felt his pulse in his ears. His fists tightened, not because he wanted to swing, but because his body remembered another place, another rule set. In the ring, disrespect got answered. Here, it only got punished. "Move," Malik said again low. Tanner's grin widened. "See? He mad now." Then Tanner said it. Loud enough for the hallway. Loud enough for it to stick. That's how it is, Tanner said. Black kids like you always act tough inside, but outside, y'all weak. The hallway went quiet in that sharp, uncomfortable way. A few gasps. A few snickers. Someone whispered, "Damn." Malik froze. It felt like the floor dropped an inch under his feet. He wasn't just being teased now. He was being placed, labeled, reduced. "Watch your mouth," Malik said, his voice shaking just a little. Tanner shrugged. "I'm just saying what everybody thinking." A teacher appeared at the end of the hall, drawn by the noise. She frowned as she walked over. "What's going on here?" she asked. Tanner stepped back instantly, hands up like he was innocent. "Nothing. We were just talking." The teacher looked at Malik. "You okay?" Malik opened his mouth. He wanted to say it, wanted to tell her exactly what Tanner had said, how it felt, how it wasn't just a joke, but the words stuck. He saw Tanner watching him, daring him. He saw the other kids waiting, curious, uncomfortable, ready to disappear if things got real. "I'm fine," Malik said quietly. The teacher nodded, relieved. "Good, let's keep it moving." Just like that, it was over. Or at least, that's how it looked. Malik walked to class with his heart pounding, his ears burning. He sat down and stared at his desk, while the room filled with noise around him. The teacher started the lesson, but Malik didn't hear a word of it. His mind replayed the moment again and again. The way Tanner said it. The way nobody stopped him. The way the teacher didn't ask more. It wasn't just Tanner. It was the silence around Tanner that hurt more. At lunch, Malik didn't eat. He picked at his food, then threw it away untouched. He sat outside on the steps, staring at the concrete. The cold bit through his jeans, but he didn't move. He felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of him. Part of him was angry. Not the wild anger people expected. A quieter kind. The kind that burned slow and deep. He knew he could hurt Tanner if he wanted to. He knew his hands were trained, his body disciplined. But he also knew what would happen if he did. He'd be the problem. He'd be the headline. He'd be exactly what they already believed him to be. So he stayed still. At afternoon, Malik skipped talking to anyone. He didn't joke. He didn't laugh. He didn't even look up much. When the final bell rang, he left fast, like the building itself was pressing down on him. At home, his mom noticed right away. "You hungry?" she asked. Malik shook his head. She frowned slightly. "Something happened?" He wanted to tell her. He really did. But he also didn't want to see that tired look in her eyes turn into worry or anger. He didn't want to add one more weight to her shoulders. "I'm just tired," he said. She didn't push. But she watched him walk to his room like she knew that wasn't the full truth. Later that evening, Malik stood in front of the mirror again. He lifted his sleeves and looked at his arms. Strong, solid, built by mornings nobody saw and nights nobody asked about. He pressed his fists together slowly, feeling the familiar strength there. "They don't know," he whispered to himself. But a smaller voice answered back. Quiet and sharp. "What if knowing doesn't matter?" Malik lay on his bed that night, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the hallway. The word, the silence. He thought about how easy it was for people to decide who you were without asking. How dangerous it felt to speak up. How staying quiet felt like letting them win. He rolled onto his side and closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come easy. Somewhere deep inside him, something shifted. Not loud, not traumatic. Just a crack in the wall he'd built to keep everything contained. And cracks, once they start, don't stay small for long. The next few days passed in a blur, but the feeling stayed. Malik carried it with him like an extra backpack, heavy and impossible to put down. He went to class. He took notes. He answered questions when called on. From the outside, nothing looked different. Inside, everything felt louder. At home, he spent more time in his room. He closed his door more often. When his mom asked simple questions, he gave simple answers. Not because he didn't trust her, but because he didn't know how to explain what it felt like to be seen as less before you even spoke. How do you tell someone that silence can bruise just as badly as words? At the gym, though, things were different. The gym didn't care what anyone called him at school. The ropes still slapped the floor. The bags still swung back when he hit them. His body still responded the same way it always had. But even there, the thoughts followed him. Malik stood in the ring one evening, gloves on, sweat dripping into his eyes. Coach Darnell watched from the edge, arms crossed, saying nothing. Malik threw punch after punch, but his timing was off. He was rushing, thinking too much. Stop, Coach said sharply. Malik froze. Coach stepped closer and tapped Malik's chest lightly with 2 fingers. You hear, he said, then tapped Malik's head. But you also hear. Malik pulled his gloves off and looked away. I'm fine. Coach didn't raise his voice. He never did. You lying. Malik swallowed. He hated that Coach could see him so clearly. Sit, Coach said, nodding toward the bench. Malik sat. His shoulders slumped without him meaning to. The gym noise faded again, replaced by the hum of lights and distant footsteps. Coach took a seat across from him. You ain't been yourself all week. Malik shrugged. School. Coach nodded slowly. Figures. Malik glanced up. What's that supposed to mean? Coach leaned back. Means school teaches more than math. Sometimes it teaches you where folks think you belong. Malik felt his chest tighten. They think I'm weak. Coach studied him for a long moment. And you think that? No, Malik said quickly. Then quieter. I don't think so. Coach didn't smile. That hesitation right there? That's what I'm worried about. Malik stared at the floor. It don't matter what I am in here, he said. Out there, they already decided. Coach leaned forward. Let me tell you something, he said. The ring taught you control, discipline, respect, but it ain't supposed to shrink you everywhere else. Malik looked up. So what am I supposed to do? Swing on them? Coach shook his head. If fighting fixed ignorance, the world would have been healed a long time ago. Malik exhaled slowly. Then what? You stand, Coach said. You decide who you are before they do. Malik didn't answer. He didn't know how to stand without things getting worse. He knew the rules at school. He knew who got punished. He knew how quickly truth could be twisted. That night, Malik lay awake again. He thought about his mom working double shifts, about Coach opening the gym before sunrise, about how much work he'd put into becoming something real, something solid, and how easy it was for someone else to pretend none of that mattered. At school, the bullying didn't stop. It just changed shape. Sometimes it was laughter when he walked by. Sometimes whispers. Sometimes looks that said, I dare you. Tanner didn't always say anything anymore. He didn't have to. The damage had already been done. One afternoon in gym class, Malik was paired up with a boy he barely knew. The teacher told them to spar lightly, just footwork, no punches. Malik followed the rules. He always did. Tanner watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, smirk ready. Careful, Tanner called out. He might cry. A few kids laughed. Malik's partner hesitated, then stepped back like Malik was unpredictable, like he was dangerous just by existing. Relax, Malik said quietly. I'm not going to hurt you. The boy nodded, embarrassed, but the space between them stayed. Malik felt something twist inside him. Not anger. Not fear. Something heavier. Something like shame that didn't belong to him, but still stuck Dot after class. A girl named Sophia caught up to him near the lockers. She spoke fast, like she didn't want anyone to notice. That wasn't okay, she said. Malik blinked. What? What Tanner keeps doing, she said. It's messed up. Malik looked around. Why you telling me this? Sophia shrugged. Because nobody else is. For a second, Malik didn't know what to say. The simple acknowledgement hit him harder than any insult. Thanks, he said. Sophia nodded and walked off before anyone could see them talking. It wasn't a big moment. No applause. No justice. But something shifted inside Malik. Just a little. That evening, Malik trained harder than usual. Not reckless, focused. Every punch landed clean. Every step was sharp. Coach watched him closely and nodded once, satisfied. After practice, Malik sat alone, breathing slow, sweat cooling on his skin. He thought about the hallway, about the gym, about Sophia's words, about coaches. You decide who you are before they do. Malik clenched his fists, then relaxed them. He wasn't ready to speak yet. He wasn't ready to confront anyone. But he was done pretending the words didn't hurt. Done shrinking himself to make other people comfortable. Something was coming. He could feel it. He just didn't know when the moment would force his hand. The moment came sooner than Malik expected. It started like any other school day. Ordinary on the surface, heavy underneath. There was a buzz in the air, because the school was hosting an assembly that afternoon. A mix of announcements, awards, and speeches meant to talk about unity and school pride. Teachers reminded students to behave. Posters about respect lined the walls, bright words taped over old cracks. Malik sat in his seat during third period, tapping his pencil lightly against his notebook. His chest felt tight, like his body knew something his mind hadn't caught up to yet. In gym class later that day, the tension finally broke. The class was split into groups for a fitness circuit. Push-ups, sprints, jump rope. Malik moved through each station quietly, focused on his breathing, his form. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He never did. But Tanner was watching. When Malik finished his sprints ahead of time, Tanner laughed loudly from across the room. Damn, he said, shaking his head. Didn't know weak came with cardio. A few kids laughed. Others looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. The gym teacher glanced over. Knock it off, he said half-heartedly, then went back to his clipboard. Malik felt the familiar heat rise, but this time it didn't sit in his chest. It traveled upward, steady and controlled. He stood there, breathing slow, eyes locked forward. Tanner stepped closer. What's wrong? He said. You got something to say today? Or you still scared? The room felt smaller, quieter. Even the kids who didn't care could sense something was about to happen. Malik turned. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't shake? You done? Malik asked. Tanner blinked, surprised. What? You done talking? Malik repeated. A few heads turned. Someone whispered Malik's name. Tanner scoffed. Man, look at you, he said. Trying to act tough now? Malik stepped closer, but not into Tanner's space. He stood tall, shoulders relaxed, hands open at his sides. This ain't acting, Malik said. And I don't need to prove nothing to you. Tanner laughed, but it sounded forced now. Yeah? Then why you always so quiet? Malik held his gaze. Because loud don't mean strong.
The room went still. Tanner's smile faltered. You think you strong? Malik didn't answer right away. He looked around the gym, at the faces watching. Some curious, some nervous, some guilty. I know who I am, Malik said finally. Tanner opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the gym teacher stepped in, sensing the shift too late. That's enough, he said sharply. Both of you. Back to your stations. Tanner rolled his eyes and walked off, muttering under his breath. Malik stayed where he was for a moment, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the weight of what he'd just done. He hadn't swung. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't backed down either. Word traveled fast. By the time the assembly started, Malik could feel eyes on him as he walked into the auditorium. Whispers followed him down the aisle. Tanner sat a few rows back, arms crossed, jaw tight. The principal stood at the podium, talking about respect, about standing up for what's right. Malik listened, but it felt strange, like the words were floating above the room instead of living inside it. Then came the awards. Academic honors. Sports recognition. Community service. Malik clapped along with everyone else, polite and quiet. And now, the principal said, we'd like to recognize a student whose achievements outside of school have brought pride to our community. Malik's stomach dropped. The principal cleared his throat. Malik Carter. The room murmured. Malik froze in his seat. His ears rang. Malik is a junior boxing champion, the principal continued. He's represented his district with discipline, dedication, and excellence. Malik stood slowly, legs stiff. He could feel the stares now, sharp and focused. As he walked toward the stage, he passed Tanner's row. Tanner's face had changed. No smirk. No laugh. Just confusion. Malik took the plaque from the principal, hands steady. He faced the crowd for a moment, heart pounding so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't proud in the way people expected. He was calm. Back in his seat, Malik stared at the plaque resting in his lap. Junior boxing champion. Black letters. Real weight. The whispers sounded different now. That's him. No way. I didn't know. Malik glanced back once. Tanner wasn't looking at him anymore. For the first time, Malik understood something clearly. Strength wasn't about fists or fear. It was about standing in truth when the world tried to erase it. And nothing felt louder than that quiet moment of knowing he didn't need to prove himself anymore. After the assembly, the school felt different. Not fixed. Not healed. Just quieter. Like people were thinking instead of talking. Malik walked through the hallway holding the plaque under his arm. He wasn't showing it off. He wasn't hiding it either. It was just there, solid and real, like the truth finally had weight. A few students nodded at him as he passed. Some smiled awkwardly. Some looked away, embarrassed. Malik didn't chase any of it. He had learned by now that recognition could be just as uncomfortable as ridicule when it came too late. Near his locker, Tanner stood alone. For a second, Malik considered walking past without saying anything. That would have been easier. But something in him had changed. Not louder. Clearer. Tanner cleared his throat. So you box. Malik nodded once. Yeah. Tanner shifted his weight. Didn't know. Malik studied him. Tanner looked smaller somehow. Not weak. Just human. You never asked, Malik said. Tanner opened his mouth like he wanted to say more, then closed it. I was just joking before, he muttered. Malik didn't raise his voice. He didn't smile either. Jokes don't make people feel small on accident. Tanner's face flushed. He nodded, stiff. Yeah, I guess. Malik turned away. That was enough. He didn't need an apology wrapped in pretty words. He didn't need Tanner to understand everything. He just needed to stop being invisible. Later that afternoon, Malik sat at home on his bed, the plaque resting against his desk. His mom stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes shining. They called me from the school, she said softly. You didn't tell me. Malik shrugged. Didn't think it mattered. She walked over and picked up the plaque, running her fingers over the words like she was reading them with her hands. It matters, she said. Not because of this. She tapped the plaque. But because you mattered before this. Malik felt something loosen in his chest. At the gym that evening, Coach Darnell didn't say much. He never did when words weren't needed. He just nodded once when Malik walked in, pride quiet but clear in his eyes. You stood, Coach said later, as Malik wrapped his hands. Malik nodded. I did. Coach leaned back. Remember that feeling. World gonna test it again. Malik smiled slightly. I know. The next day at school, the whispers were gone. Not because everyone suddenly became kind, but because assumptions had cracked. And cracks, once they show, can't be unseen. Malik still walked quietly. Still kept his head down sometimes. But it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from focus. He had learned something no trophy could teach him. That dignity didn't come from approval. That silence could be powerful when it was chosen, not forced. That strength wasn't loud, and it didn't need permission. And the word weak. It no longer followed him. It stayed with the people who needed it to feel bigger. Malik just kept walking forward, carrying himself the same way he always had, only now, the world was finally trying to catch up.